På ny, velkommen til Stavanger SAKPROSAFESTIVAL. Vi kommet til selve rosinen i pølser, kanskje, vil jeg tro, her nå. Men minner om at vi avslutter kvelden her på KK med Helge O. Svela, som har en hund som heter Whisky, som kan 69 ord, og som har redderen, eller han har noen påstand om at hunder, han omskrev til med Darwin, the survival of the friendliest, etter å ha fått seg hund. Ja. Nei, det ble veldig gøy. Vi gleder oss skikkelig til det, ikke minst forleggeren som også sitter i salen. Hei! Og klokka 6, altså etter dette på Sølvberget, så det Anne Beach. Men nå altså, Simon Critchley har jo vært her på KK tidligere i uka på onsdag og snakket om sin kommende bok om tragedien og grekerne, som kommer først i april i år. Hans siste bok på norsk denne, det vi tenker på når vi tenker på fotball. Og når jeg så den forsiden, som hele mitt liv har spilt med nummer 14 på brystet, så kjøpte jeg den jo umiddelbart. Det altså bilder av Johan Cruyff. Jeg grein i 1974 når Nederland tapte finalen i VM mot Vest-Tyskland, så det var den gangen. Far min holdt med Vest-Tyskland, jeg holdt med Nederland. Det en veldig, veldig god bok. Den mulig å kjøpe der borte etterpå. Og jeg regner med at Simon reiser verden rundt og presenterer denne boka, og jeg sikker på at det veldig sjelden han får lov til å snakke med en skikkelig fotballspiller som har vært landslagskaptein og som har spilt mot Liverpool til og med, og har en sklitakling som du kommer til å snakke om, tror jeg. Simon,
I know what he's talking about, yeah.
Simon sitt favorittlag Liverpool, bare så det sagt. Jeg har også sett litt av korrespondansen som disse to har hatt. Jeg tror Brede hadde 21 temaer han hadde lyst til å snakke om. Presenterte de for Simon, som sa at alt var greit, unntatt Craig Bellamy. Det vil han ikke snakke om. Thank you for joining us here, Simon and Brede. Peoploids, welcome. Have a good talk.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Simon. It's great to have you here.
It's very nice to be here.
Yes, we share a love for football, but I have to say, when I read your book, it's very insightful, it's beautiful, and you put into words many of the things I think about when I think about football. So well done.
But we can end it there, then we can just...
Yeah, we can. Shall we go?
That's fine. Thank you very much. Good night. That's fine. That's fine.
But there's a question of how important football is. And I'll start with a couple of quotes from really famous people. Mm-hmm. One is from the Pope. The Pope said...
Which one?
Pope John Paul II.
Oh, the Pole.
He said, out of all unimportant things, football is the most important.
Right.
Whereas your childhood hero, Bill Shankly, said, football is not a matter of life and death. Mm-hmm. It's much more important than that. Mm-hmm. Where do you stand? Are you in between somewhere?
Shankly. Shankly, always. Can I just thank... I want to thank Jan Inge for... I want to thank you for being here. It's great. Because we met the other night and we had a little talk in the comfort of the lobby of the Victoria Hotel. And it was very interesting. And Luca, thank you for coming. Thank you, anyway. Thank you for being here. And it's very important. It's very important, and I'm with Shankly rather than the Pope. Although the current Pope has got serious football interests. Yeah. Francis, yeah, he's...
But, serious people would argue that life and death, politics, religion, how we organize our society, these things are much more important than a game.
Yeah.
But there's something about football. Tell us a little about being in the moment, the beauty of the game.
It gives you, it's play, right? So you can always say with football that it's only a game. So it doesn't matter. In that sense, it's play. But it's serious play. And what happens when we're engaged, and the strange thing about the scheduling of this talk is that at this moment, my team are playing, Liverpool are playing, Fulham are playing, as we speak. So I'm waiting for WhatsApp updates from my son, who's at the game. He's at Watford, in with the Watford fans. So that's another thing, which is why football is important. Is that I try and maintain a decent relationship with my son, but my primary relationship with him is through football. 80% of what we text about, we talk about, is about the team, and I violently imposed a love of Liverpool Football Club on him at birth, as it was imposed on me at birth. I was given no choice. And I think what's also one of the important things about football is that you're not given choice. Your team is your fate. And that means you're going to lose, because not every team can win. Only one team can win. Most teams are going to lose. So the team that you're given, you're fated to love, are going to let you down. So the real moral lesson of football is a lesson in defeat and disappointment.
But still, you write somewhere in the book, there's always hope.
Yeah.
There's always hope for the next game, the next season.
In comes hope to tickle your feet. And then you realize the soles of your feet are on fire, right? So that the worst thing about football is the hope. So in one example, I was watching the Champions League final on May the 26th in London with my son, and I thought we were going to beat Real Madrid and win the Champions League for the 6th time. Liverpool have won the Champions League 5 times. That's twice more than Manchester United. And we lost, and it was painful. But even then we talked about, should we go to the pub and have a drink, or should we just sit here? Neither of us were in the mood. But then we started to talk about the next season. So hope ineluctably flickers and picks up, and you're thinking about the next game. And so the lesson of defeat is one thing, and the hope is painful, but an important thing as well. Now, but what I'd say about the, in terms of, football is also the chance to think about really serious things. So as someone that teaches philosophy, things like space, time, reason, emotion, passion, the relationship between reason and passion, religion, the nature of belief, identity, community, history, all these things can be understood through football. I think in really powerful and visceral ways, connected to something that is at once intensely personal, right? So my relationship with my child, or with my father or my mother, or on my grandmother's grave is a Liverpool crest, which I didn't think about as a strange thing until a few years ago, and I photographed it and showed it to someone and said, there's a Liverpool crest on your grandmother's grave, and of course there's a Liverpool crest on my grandmother. So that in my case, that's in my unimportant individual case, there's 100 years of personal history, which is and every fan has a history like that, a comparable history, and those histories are very important, but they're tied together into the community of fans, and then the relationship to fans of other teams. So there's this relationship between the intensely personal, the deeply felt, passionately held commitment, and also the relation of that to something collective, something shared in a lived way. That's really, really important, and there's not much in life that's like that. And so in a sense, because it's play, and we're given a break from life for the duration of the game, what is really important and what's really serious can show up because it's play. We're given permission to kind of watch something, and which is at once stupid. Football is pretty dumb. The amount of time I spend watching football is unforgivable. And on the other hand, it's also, I would insist, an exercise of intelligence. And it's an exercise of intelligence where everyone is equal. Every football fan has opinions and judgments, and all those judgments are equally valid. And that can be someone of, Luca's age or someone of my age or someone in between, and you have opinions about football and discussions about football. And people are relaxed in their judgments. They're relaxed in their opinions, unlike, say, when it comes to things like philosophy or arts. You know, you're sitting there in a theatre watching some dreadful performance, trying to stay awake, and you feel you should be there because you're going there because you should be there, and you're not sure, is this good, is this complete shit, is this good, is this complete shit, and you're kind of falling asleep. That anxiety in football doesn't exist. We know what's going on. It's a game, 90 minutes, 22 players. It will have a certain form, and that allows for a kind of relaxation in the spectator. And it's the spectators, the fans, that really interest me, and a rational discourse amongst fans. So football's one of the few areas of life, perhaps the only area of life, where I can have a passionately held commitment, conviction to my team, and I can change my mind, right? So if I'll have a certain view of a game, and you could have a different view of a game, and you could persuade me of that on the basis of evidence. So football is a wonderful example of rational communication in a strange way.
Yeah, but you're still you are part of the Liverpool tribe.
Yeah.
So tribalism is a thing in football where Liverpool fans and Man United fans will have a conflict, a friendly conflict, but they will have it. But we've seen, it strikes me because we've seen in recent years tribalism creep into, say, politics.
Yeah.
You have Trump in America. You have in your own country Brexit, where it seems these tribes can't even communicate. But you say in football, we'll always be convinced by the other tribe?
There's communication, and the weird thing about the tribalism of football is that, for example, the English Premier League, right? And most of the people watching English Premier League games at the grounds, let's say most people in those grounds voted to leave the European Union. Let's just say that as a hypothesis. Most of those people, as fans, have got no problem with immigration when it comes to their team, right? So their team could be full of foreign players. Somehow that's not a problem. So the funny thing about football is you can have this intense tribal sense of who you are and who they are. They're the enemy and we're us. At the same time as that being the team that's... Your team is a team of players from all across the world, and the fan base is international. And of course, what's making the whole thing possible, which is money, which we could talk about, is also international and mobile. And that's to put this into one statement, I don't think you can feel good about football. Right? I think football, I love football, I watch it, all of that, but you can't feel good about it. Football is a dirty game, and what's going on in football at the highest level, say Manchester City at the moment, is made possible through money from the United Arab Emirates and kind of dirty movements of capital. So football is a place where the contradictions of our life are most manifest, I think, in an important way. I don't think it's just a kind of escape, and we can kind of, it's not just an opium of the people. It's not that. Football fans are very well aware of what makes their team possible and the money flows and how ugly that can be. How tolerable is that? Well, at what point would you stop supporting a team because of what they're doing? Or a question you asked me, should you work for Norwegian broadcasting in Qatar? I think these are questions we ask ourselves. But I'd go.
You'd go? Okay.
No one's going to ask me.
I'll make a note of that. Ta et bilde litt, as I say that. But this has been exposed, of course, over the recent weeks in what's called football leaks, where a German newspaper, Der Spiegel, has gained access to millions of documents showing, for example, that Manchester City, Paris Saint-Germain, some of the richest clubs in the world, have actually been helped by FIFA to avoid the financial fair play rules. And you go through this in your book as well. There's this conflict between. So when we're supporting our team in the stadium, it's socialism. say everyone's equal.
Yeah.
Whereas I would say, having lived in professional football for 15 years, international football is probably the most capitalist thing you can imagine. So that conflict there, should fans then at some point unite across tribes to demand change?
Yeah, I think a global, alliance of fans to bring down FIFA would be a really good thing. If there was some kind of, Tahrir Square or a Occupy Wall Street version of football fans to unify and bring down the corrupt behemoth that is FIFA, that would be a good thing.
The problem there, of course, is that the Manchester City fans or the Liverpool fans or the Fulham fans will say, I would like to do that, but really just want my team to win on Saturday.
Yeah. Yes, but you also care about the game, right? It spreads more broadly than that. I mean, football, there's this tribalism, but it's a tribalism. So in the case of my team, Liverpool Football Club, there is a tribalism, but the identity of Liverpool since the 60s has been very consciously, we are international, we are European. We're European royalty, right? So our identity is not English. We happen to be in a country called England, but we're not really an English club. Liverpool is a separate place. It kind of fell from, it's like Marseille in France. It's a place that's in another country. And that allows for different kinds of patterns of sympathy. So another thing about football, which is really, really important, is that in its humble and kind of straightforward way, it can open up the world to people. Like my first understanding of, say, South America as an entity, as a thing, was through football. Was through things like the 1970 World Cup and watching Peru. And what I was attracted to in Peru was they had these white shirts with a red diagonal stripe, and I thought, that looks pretty good. But on the basis of that, you then become interested in Peru. You then become interested in what kind of thing is South America? How does that work? How does football work there? How is it linked to politics? How is it linked to economics? It can open up a whole worldview. So I think there's something about football as a global game, which is, I think, it can be an avenue to much wider topics in really interesting ways. And I think football is, although it tends to be identified with, a certain view of masculinity, I think that is fading and that's changing. And I think football is a place where actually socially quite liberal things are going to be happening more and more often. Development of women's football, I think issues of sexuality in relation to football, the fact that footballers get depressed, the fact that footballers might be gay, and in a context where they can't be publicly gay. I think all these things are going to change in the next few years. I think football is a complex thing. It can be, because people care about it in this deep way, it can be a way of opening up a view of the world and actually allowing for things to transform, I think. That's at my most hopeful, I think, that. So it's not just about your tribe. You care about the game and the conduct of the game and the way in which it's played and the way in which it's administered. So the fact that the governing body of football is FIFA, and it's a corrupt mess, and that could be changed. I think that's something that would unify fans, because the weird thing about football is it's a rule-governed activity. The 17 rules of the game, or whatever it is, and but we still like cheating as well. There's another. You played against Luis Suarez.
Yes. We spoke about him on Thursday.
Yeah.
How can you love Luis Suarez?
Because
you have to be a Liverpool fan.
No,
this is the guy who has at least twice bitten his opponent in a match.
Yeah. I think Luis Suarez is an extraordinary player. He wants to win. So he is the, and also why Suarez? Because with Suarez, we can put that in the context of Uruguayan football. And there's a great book written by Eduardo Galeano on Uruguayan football, Soccer in Sun and Shadow. And Galeano is a serious writer, and he uses football as a way of opening up an understanding of Uruguay and Uruguay's relation to the world and how the attitude towards football developed. And Suarez is a manifestation of that. You have to win, right? And it gives certain players this capacity, this strength of will to be in certain situations where the team can be losing, and someone like Suarez will decide this will not stand, and he will change the situation. And also great players, I mean, really, really, really great players like Suarez, like Zidane, like Cantona, are players like Maradona, are players which are always moving at the edge of a kind of violence. The exception here is Messi, maybe. Who we can talk about Messi, but there's a capacity certain great players have to as we use a kind of violence, and that can kind of spill over into actual violence at certain times. And but that's also something. There's something very attractive about that.
Oh, totally. But playing against him, I've played against Luis Suarez. Remember him running at me, and I was just looking across to see where the other defenders were, to get them as close as possible. Because you're right, it's
you're a lot bigger than him, though.
Yes, but he would run through a brick wall.
Yeah.
But there's a desperation.
What was it like with you? Because I mean, it's you know, because Norway is Norway. Norway is a special place and all of that. But you know, if we were in England now, you'd be being mobbed, and you know. I told my son I was doing this thing with you, and he was really excited. We were talking about your career and telling stories and all of that. But what it was like to live as a professional footballer in the Premier League for as long as you did, because
you touched on it a little bit. I think I was lucky to be old enough when I arrived there, and also being from...
Were you about 20, 23?
25, 6.
25, 6.
Like it was 2 months old.
Okay.
So, but that helped. But of course, it is a challenge to live there, because these players are idolized, and wherever you walk, whatever you say, people take notice, and you're given loads of money all of a sudden. And if you're 17, 18, and you've lived closed, safe life up until that point, it can be really hard. And I've seen many players struggle with that, because you are not allowed to show any weakness at all in this game.
Yeah.
You arrive, you walk into the changing room, and everyone is strong. Everyone is a winner.
Yeah.
So no one ever talks about problems, and you're meant to be happy all the time because you're doing the best job in the world.
Yeah.
So that is a problem. But for me, I think some wise people told me before I went to the Premier League, you have to try to be yourself, and you have to try and live the life that you would live if you didn't play football. And so I always thought, for the 90 minutes, you're in that zone. You're a warrior. You have to do everything to win. But then the rest of the week is longer than those 90 minutes.
Yeah.
So the rest of the week, we would try to do normal stuff, and live a life as normal as possible. And that, of course, makes it so much easier to retire in the end.
Yeah.
Because I hadn't built up a lifestyle that was so far away from a normal lifestyle. Right. So we could quite easily just move back here and carry on. Like you would say, keep calm and carry on. Yeah.
But you were also part of... You were part of the Fulham team, and we were talking about this the other night, that went from being, you know, a team in trouble, a good team, but a team in trouble, and that team formed under Roy Hodgson into a considerable European force.
Yes.
Right? So you were part of a team that became a team. So the thing about football for me is association football. So at the core of football is association. The experience of it, it's a sociable game, and the sociability amongst players, between players and fans, all of that. And what any football coach or what fans are trying to bring into existence is a team that believes in itself as a team. How did that emerge, and then it fell apart as well?
Yeah, it emerged through well, we can talk about the role of the manager, but the manager is always key. But we had a great manager, Roy Hodgson, who, funnily enough, has been the manager in Viking, Stavanger, would you believe it? But he
got around, didn't he?
Yeah, he had a very clear understanding of how he wanted to play, but most importantly, he picked guys, personalities, who were team players, who were just decent human beings, I would say. And then he coached us into improving as players. And then, of course, we all had this mentality of giving our best for the team. And that, for me, is the beauty of football, when you're playing. When that happens, when you can see that this team of 11 average players suddenly becomes something much better.
Yeah.
So we beat Juventus, would you believe it? 4-1 at Craven Cottage.
Remember listening to that
and
on
we
the radio.
deserved to win as well.
Yeah.
And none of our players would have got in the Juventus team. But because this was just this must have been near perfection in football, at least in my career, this was perfection, where everyone, all the individuals become a better version of themselves because of the system and because of the inspiration in the team, and because when you look in your teammate's eye, you can see the fire in his eyes as well as in your eyes, and then magical things can happen.
Can we talk about the system? Because I think it's often, I imagine there are serious football fans here this evening, but for a lot of people who watch football, particularly where I live in the United States, it's all about goals, right? Because goals are when things happen, and it's about stars, it's about Messi, Ronaldo, and the rest. And these are extraordinary players. But the core of a team, if the core of football is a team, the core of a team is the defence. And what's often misunderstood is the art of defending.
The beautiful art of defending.
The beautiful art of defending. Yeah. And there's this great Italian writer called Gianni Brera, who says that the most sublime football match is 0-0, right? And there is a truth to that. And you're just watching two teams, Juventus, Milan, whoever it might be, Juventus, Napoli, or something like that, cancel each other out. And you're watching, we were talking the other night about Bonucci, Berzali, Chiellini, that as a unit, just annulling a team like Barcelona. And there's a kind of, it's a negative beauty in that sense, but the system that makes that possible is quite precise, right? To organize a defense.
It's about it. Roy Hodgson once told me, in a game of football, if you're lucky, you have the ball for 3 minutes.
Yeah.
The other 87 minutes, all you're doing is thinking and moving. And you, of course, think and move to be in the right place in every moment. And if you are in the right place in every moment, not yourself, but your colleagues in defense and the rest of the team, then they cannot score. So any goal you concede is always a mistake. Sometimes it's a very big mistake, everyone can see it, but it's always a mistake.
Right.
So this, for me, when I look at football, I see the way the defenders move, and also, of course, not just their instruction and the way they move and think, but also their almost telepathy in between, especially two centre-backs. So I told you the story when I was at Fulham. We were coached so much, me and Aaron Hughes, the other centre-back, that in the end, because when you play the games, it's so loud, so it's very hard to communicate.
He was saying
verbally.
Yeah.
So you're looking to get to a level where I know what he's thinking. So that when he moves forward, I move back. We both go left, we both go right.
Yeah.
And this is, of course, I'm a centre-back, so I look at centre-backs. But I think it's stronger in the central defenders than anywhere. And you have to have this understanding, almost like two twins. Every time you do the same thing.
Yeah.
And when it happens, it's just the greatest feeling.
Yeah.
Really great.
And that sounds, but that is, philosophically, an incredibly interesting proposition. Because what players are doing when they're playing is articulating a relationship to space, right? It's all about the occupation and control of space and the making of space. But that space is not, it's not three-dimensional Newtonian space. It's a space which is malleable, a space which is flexible, which opens up And a great player is a player who makes space. Or, Thomas Müller, the great false nine, the German false nine is called in German der Raumdeuter, right? The space interpreter yeah. Or the space investigator. And Suarez is a player who makes space. Not the fastest player, not technically the most gifted player, but a player who makes space around him. And there's something about what's going on in football, and this might sound stupid, but I think it's true, is that we get that space is not objective, three-dimensional space measured scientifically. Space is this lived space which opens up and closes down. It's this existential understanding of space that philosophers as diverse as Heidegger and Merleau-Ponty have been trying to think about. And also time, the time of a football game is 90 minutes, and each of those minutes is measured in seconds, and you add those seconds to the other minutes together, you end up in two 45-minute units, perfect, objective, linear time. But the experience of a game, temporally, is very different. Right? Time can speed up, it can accelerate, time can slow down. And we can see that. We can see time change when we're watching a game. We're watching a game and we're aware of moments of acceleration when there's a passage of play, something happens and things speed up. And then when something's going wrong for our team, things slow down. And this is the point, again, that philosophers have been trying to make for 100 years, is there's a difference between objective time, the time of the clock, and lived time. And that lived time is actually what we do day to day, every minute of the day. But getting that how do we get that into focus? Well, football gives us a way of getting that into focus. We do that, we understand that, and that's kind of cool. Klopp, Jurgen Klopp, king of the cop.
We'll get to him soon. Don't worry. Yeah.
It's all about the moment. The moment. He said the moment. We have to seize hold of the moment, create moments.
Yeah. No, there is I can totally relate to that. There's a feeling, I think psychologists call this flow, the experience of flow, and everyone can have this experience when they're skiing or cycling, or it always involves a physical activity, and it's where you feel like everything you do, you execute perfectly, and time slows down, and you are completely in the present moment. So there's no way you can think about yesterday or tomorrow. And I've had this feeling less than 10 times in my whole career.
Really?
One time for an entire game, away to Stoke. Tony Pulis was the manager, and every long ball they kicked landed here.
Right, right.
But this feeling is something...
And did you know it was going to land there before?
That's the weird thing. You almost know it's going to land there.
Yeah.
So it becomes just one of these experiences that you remember for the rest of your life, and you look for. Yeah. How can I recreate this? Where everything you do is just perfect. Every step you take, every header you go up for. So I can totally relate to the fact that time is a different thing depending on what you do.
But what happens? So what's it like not to have that anymore when you stop playing? What's it like when you've been a proper professional footballer like you?
I miss that almost as much as the paycheck. Almost as much. You can come close to that, hopefully.
Does it matter how much you're being paid when you're playing? Does it matter? Do players think about that, or do they just want to play? Does it matter that Raheem Sterling is making the money he's making, or whatever?
I think most players in the Premier League would pay to play.
Right.
But of course, we're talking about two different things here. If you compare the money you make as a Premier League player to anyone else, a teacher or a nurse, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing because it's not fair at all. But of course, what players do is they compare themselves to their teammates in the changing room. And they go, well, I'm playing, he's not playing. Why is he making more than me?
Yeah. And
this drives everything. And of course, the TV money now, where I told you the other day that Sky in England are now paying £11 million per game. And that's in England. and then you have Norway and Sweden and America and Australia and all the countries. So of course in this perspective, the 22 that actually play the game should make money.
Yeah.
But there's no way of, it's like socialism and capitalism. There's just no way of working that out, I think. It makes sense in a market perspective, but it was also slightly embarrassing.
Yeah, yeah, and it's you know, and also, I don't know what the structure of teams here is like Viking here and how the team is structured. But I just came from Barcelona, and I was in Barcelona, and which was talking about football there, which was like being, you know, a Muslim in Mecca. It was great, lots of fun. But I mean, yeah, the members own the team. Right? The team is still, Football Club Barcelona is owned by the fans. So it's a more democratic structure. What's happened in England in most cases is that owners come in with money, the team is sold again. I think that makes a difference, don't you?
Yeah.
In here, I mean locally, the teams are owned by the fans,
by investors.
Yeah,
but many investors, and they are never from the Middle East or Russia. But of course, that can bring us nicely onto the big. So let's say you buy a football club. The most important decision you have to make is the manager.
Yeah.
And I've worked with many managers through my time. The most intelligent one was Roy Hodgson, and he said to me once, "Football is endless suffering. It only ever stops for a few moments just after you win."
Yeah.
Just after you win. So the 90 minutes are the worst. And then if you win, it's great. But then he starts thinking about the next game, of course.
Yeah.
So you can never escape. And you are constantly having to answer to players, fans, the owner, the sponsors, TV, media. But you have perhaps found a manager that deals with this and seems happy.
Yeah.
He's the only one, I think, that genuinely seems happy.
Yeah, because he believes in God.
This is Jurgen Klopp. Is that why?
Higher than football stands God. In a way, you know, he'll say that. He won't declare his religious belief, but when he's asked, he'll say that. I don't know how happy. He's pretty happy. He's able to read. I mean, it's about. I mean, it made sense for him to come to Liverpool because he, with his background in Borussia Dortmund, who are a special team, you know, the yellow wall at Dortmund and the fan culture there. So it was about. I mean, the primary concern of the coach is to make the fans happy. That's what this is about. You've got to make people happy. It's what people used to say about Bill Shankly. He made people happy. That's an extraordinary thing to be able to do. And but Klopp was able to read the fan culture very early and to kind of intuit what was going on, and then try and replicate some of that on the pitch with the mixture of swagger, bonhomie, but also discipline. There's a discipline that Klopp exerts over players, and there are players that he doesn't tolerate, and there are players that he likes a lot. But yeah, I think it's. I mean, maybe I don't know. There's a debate also about whether to be a good coach you need to have been a good player, right? Or whether that matters. You've got on the one hand, you know, Pep Guardiola, who played to a very high level, and you've got Jose Mourinho, who didn't. And does that mean, in one view, is that why Guardiola is such a good coach is that he understands what it is to be a player. And he understands what's going on. Whereas Mourinho kind of uses players like chess pieces. He sort of brings them in, gets rid of them. They're kind of instruments, and there's a coldness to him at times. But he was also able for, when Mourinho is on the defensive, when it's the world against Jose, he can get the team around him and do great things. So, and he's weird, Jose Mourinho. But he quoted.
You should be aware that in this country, 40% of this room will be Liverpool fans, another 40 Man United fans, the other 20 are either dragged here or neutral.
Yeah.
So whatever you say about, about Klopp and Mourinho.
Yeah, but the Manchester United fans are living some desperate version of reality, and they know it. You know, they know this can't go on like this. This is not what Manchester United is about as a team. This is not how they were meant to play. This is not. It's all broken down. And Mourinho, of course, calls Guardiola the philosopher. You know, this put down, this pragmatism of Mourinho it won't last. And United deserve better, as much as I despise them. And that's nothing. You know, this is where I think football is interesting. That you can, you know, I can hate Manchester United, and in a certain way I do, but I admire and respect them. They have their stories, their traditions, their victories, their heroes, their gods, their way of life, their sacred place. This is where I try and connect football to polytheism, right? So football allows for a kind of polytheistic form of religious belief, where I can have an intense commitment to my gods and my heroes and my place and my stories and my team, and other people have theirs. I don't want to impose my beliefs on other people's beliefs. I'm happy for other teams to believe what they believe, and we can coexist in a more or less tolerant way, but my gods are the better gods, you know. But I don't believe my gods are universal. I don't believe my gods have rights of exclusivity. They can't say you are saved, you are damned. It's just not like that. So football is a religion. It has its rituals, it has its practices, it has its communal acts of worship and veneration, but it allows for a kind of toleration of other kinds of worship. And that's what's very, very interesting about football, is that you go anywhere and there's this global game and these big stars and TV, but it's what's going on locally in football that's so interesting and so different.
So language that anyone can understand, and tolerance. So maybe we should have more football in the world.
Well, I think it'd be
not less.
More football in the sense in which, if I'm right, that football's an example of where people can have deep passions, but those passions can be also allow for a space of reasoned argument back and forth, where people can change their minds, and this is possible because it's only a game, ultimately. Then it would be interesting to transfer that to other areas of life, like politics. Or, you know, I've been teaching philosophy for 30 years, and I've never once experienced anyone giving a talk, and then after the talk, someone says, "You're absolutely right. I've completely changed my opinion of things. I think you're right." Never happens. Someone says something, and then they're criticized, they're talked down. Everyone sticks to their opinions. But football allows for this other set of phenomena. It's very interesting. And I think what's also interesting about football is that how much it's changed. That the football discourse, which used to be on the back cover of tabloid newspapers in places like Britain, and the quality of discussion was pretty low, that's changed enormously. And the internet, has the internet been good for human beings or not? You know, I don't know, probably not. But it's been really good for football. And it's really changed the way in which people talk about football. And so people expect a level of detailed, deep football discussion, which will take them off into all sorts of other areas now. And so you've got really intelligent football fans out there. And I think that's something that can't just be shrugged at or dismissed. It's a really interesting phenomenon.
Good to know. It's good to hear this.
Yeah.
Well, perhaps we've been going on for almost our designated timer. So should we take some questions? Maybe
Let's get some thoughts from the.
If anyone has any questions. Should have said this early on.
Don't be shy and well behaved.
Yeah.
This is something you must feel. I'm just checking the
What's the
score.
final score? Let's check that. 2-0 for Liverpool.
Really? 2-0 Liverpool. Okay. Today is a good day. But come on, there must be some thoughts out there. Go on.
Isn't it a shame that it's because there's so much money that isn't it a shame that because there's so much money now and it's so expensive to go to matches that the real fans they can't afford it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now the stadium is full of Scandinavians and
Yeah.
and business people.
Yeah. Anfield is full of Scandinavians on...
Yeah.
My nephew used to run a ticket business, a kind of an illegal ticket business. I probably shouldn't say this. I knew someone who ran a ticket, and his main business was Norwegians, Swedes, Danes coming over to watch Liverpool United, and you could get top dollar for those trips. And yeah, I don't know. I think at the moment that's okay. But when I was in Barcelona, what I was struck by in Barcelona was that the management, the administration at Barcelona have said to the fans on various occasions not to come to the games because they can sell those tickets for a greater price to Chinese tourists or whoever, because people are coming from all over the world because Barcelona is a lovely city and they want to go to the Camp Nou and watch a game. So I think in Barcelona, if you listen to Barcelona games, the crowd is very quiet, right? So I think in places like that, I think that maybe there is a problem. And I think that's something which has to be sorted out. I think it's great if people come from elsewhere to watch games, but the price of tickets has got out of control. I mean, there should be. I mean, in my view, the fans should own the clubs, and the fans should determine the price of the tickets. And I think if you look at the money that the big teams are sold for, it's actually not that much. If you think about all the Liverpool fans in the world, and most Liverpool fans are kind of my age, a bit older or a bit younger, who remember the glory days. And if you ask them all to put in, a certain amount of money, we could buy the club, and we'd own it, and we'd make the decisions. And I think that's, I don't see why that's such a difficult thought to grasp, and I think that would be a great improvement. So I really like it if the fans were able to buy the teams back, and but it could happen.
Yes, I'm from a different tribe, not United or Liverpool, but Arsenal.
All right, okay, intellectual, eh?
Yeah, that's right.
Probably a book
yeah,
reader.
it is an intellectual question because I have a question about
The
Wenger.
cosmopolitan elite.
Yes, Arsene Wenger. He was, my impression is always seen with a lot of animosity against him.
Yeah.
And I'm not so sure he was a good soccer coach, but he was good on that part of the game of understanding the game. And why the animosity against him?
Yeah, I think Wenger is a very interesting case. I think Wenger was a genius. I think Wenger was a fantastic coach. You've got to remember what Arsenal were. Arsenal were the Irish club in London. And, I was always more, in London term, more inclined towards Spurs. But Arsenal were the Irish, and they played boring football. Boring Arsenal. Tony Adams across the back, 4 across the back, 0-0. We talk about how good that is. But, Wenger transformed English football in a few years. People like Thierry Henry, Vieira, these fantastic players, and of course Bergkamp, who was one of those elegant players ever to grace a football pitch. But I think the thing with football, which is in a sense it's imposed on players, because as I understand it, your legs just go at a certain point. You just can't, but with coaches, they can carry on. I think the really difficult thing with coaches is knowing when to stop. Wenger didn't know when to stop. I think he's just addicted to the game. He's an obsessive. And he lives, breathes Arsenal Football Club. And he did it for too long. And he ended up destroying the very thing that he had created. And that's tragic. It's properly tragic what happened with Wenger. But I think he's so I think you look at people like Guardiola or Klopp or Mourinho, the question really is, when are they going to stop? and what are they going to do? Because you live with that intensity.
Yeah, it's that intensity, and also it's so competitive, this business. And to be a coach or a manager for as long as Wenger or Alex Ferguson, I think we will never.
Hodgson.
Yeah, but for this at the same club, we will never see it again.
No.
For two reasons. One is to live in that pressure environment, and the other one is, of course, you have to stay on top tactically and physically, and in the regime that you put on your players, that has to be the best one. And when Wenger came to England, he changed everything. Like you said, he brought in sports science, healthy eating, no more drinking in the pub, the right exercise. But then, of course, everyone else started doing that. And at some point, someone will do what you're doing better than you. And this is what happened to him in the end. Because if you go back to when he arrived at Arsenal, they were the best at, for example, sports science. When he left Arsenal, they were nowhere near the best. And then someone else takes over. This is the same in life, in everything, I think. But it's difficult to...
But let's talk about this in relationship to, here we have, one of the richest countries in the world, Norway, with extraordinary competence. I'm flattering the audience at this point. Extraordinary competence in a variety of domains. A good trick. There was this extraordinary moment of 90s football in Norway. You would have thought that would continue, that would develop, and that Norway would be a force, would be a world power. I don't see why not. I don't really understand what's gone wrong or what's changed in the structure of the Norwegian game, whether those players are just not coming through in the same way.
I can tell you a number of reasons. In the 19th, Norway were ranked second in the world in the FIFA rankings. This is another thing that will never happen again.
Second behind Brazil.
Behind Brazil.
Brazil, Norway. That's right.
Yeah, because we had a coach. So we had loads of players in the Premier League. Why did we have many players there? Because the English clubs were only scouting in Northern and Western Europe. And Norway had some good players, so we had 25, 30 players in the Premier League. So they're all already good. And then we had a coach, Egil Olsen, who was a genius, and he designed football tactics that the world had never seen before. So a combination of these players and this playing style gave us a competitive advantage. But we cannot have those players again, and we cannot have the tactical advantage again. So both components have gone missing.
Right.
And we have 5 million people. We have a cold, long winter. It's just not natural for Norway to be a superpower in football.
You've got the same coach as was the coach of Iceland, right, in 2016, who took a much more average set of players and formed them into a considerable unit.
To beat the mighty England.
To beat England. Humiliated England. 3 days after the Brexit vote. I thought that was poetry.
That's punching someone when they're down.
You want to leave Europe? Here's a way of leaving Europe. You're going to get beaten by Iceland. And that was a humiliation. That wasn't a defeat. That was a humiliation. Because the Iceland team they've got 2 really good players, right? And but well organised, strong, and they know what they're doing, and they played out of their skins. And the England team were in a kind of anxiety dream, an anxiety dream led by the kind of depressive quality of Wayne Rooney at his worst. That Rooney was his kind of, anyway, it was, but I hated watching that defeat by Iceland, but on the other hand, we really deserved that. But you got the same coach, you got more resources. Why? I mean, Norway, the Nations League thing has gone quite well, right? So who knows?
Yep.
Hey, Viking-fan here, but I want to go back to the heart of the football.
The heart of the football.
The heart of football. You support one of a large organization, a large business.
Yeah.
What do you think what happened in Manchester, where you had the supporters actually breaking out and forming the FC United of Manchester?
Yeah, it's interesting, right?
Do you think that is something that or is that something that what causes that? Is there something underlying drive for people who say it's not for the locals anymore, it's for tourists and other with
Right.
people who come to see the large clubs.
I think if the fans are abused fairly systematically, there will come a point where they will rebel, and that happened at United, and that could happen elsewhere. So I think it's a delicate balance, but I think that there are organisations like the Spirit of Shankly at Liverpool, and there are some very good fans organisations, and I would imagine that Klopp and the administration are tuned into what they're saying, because but you see, it's not really about winning. It's about the way you play, right? It's about the way you play. I mean, you can lose, but if you lose in a way that is played in a certain manner, then that's okay. It's not great, but it's okay. But if you play the way United sometimes have been playing this season, this kind of pragmatic, unstructured way, and the fans are just not feeling it, and the coach is criticising the players, this strikes me as, there has to be a line there, right? And there was a story this week that he said that Martial, Luke Shaw, Rashford were immature. He said that, but you can't say that. This is your team, right? And it seems to me that we were talking the other night, and you had a special relationship with Roy Hodgson, right? Interesting fellow, Roy Hodgson, but you played with him, for him. It's like that, right? And there has to be that fidelity amongst the players for that to work, and that has to be in a close relationship to the fans. Once you've got those components in place, then you're in business. You can still lose, but you're a team. And Leicester says he won't win the Premier League again for a while, but they're a team, and they play as a team, and it's that whether you've got that force, and that means acknowledging your limitations, accepting that you play badly sometimes, and moving on. There has to be a kind of humility with football, I think. There has to be a kind of modesty with it. This is a fantastic thing, but it's only a game. No, it's not.
Can I say one thing at the end? I really enjoyed this, Simon. I have to say, the fact that someone as intelligent as you, and even someone who can write books, is a football fan. Yeah, but I take a lot of comfort from that.
But this is the thing. The thing is this. There's that. Okay, thank you very much for saying that. But I mean, we can talk as we're talking as equals because we have a passion for football. We're coming at that from different angles, but this is so football. I think football allows for an equality of discussion, which if we went on for longer, we'd have more of that. I think it's something which is not adequately recognised and should be recognised a little bit more.
Thank you very much, Simon, for coming to Stavanger. Og takk, Brede, for at du ville stille opp for oss igjen. And I think your book, Simon, is up there with Eduardo Galeano's classic. And I'm sure...
Oh, thank you. Flattery will get
and I'm sure you will write something in the book who is available at this desk for you guys.
Okay.
And remember 7 o'clock, Helge Svela, da han møtte hun. Det ble gøy, altså. Thank you again.
Thank you.